All right, so we are on learning target 6, which is division. We're starting with division of fractions. Our first example here is 9/4 divided by 3/2. We can divide fractions the same way that we multiply fractions, and you can divide straight across. So 9 divided by 3 in the numerator gives us 3. And in the denominator, we have 4 divided by 2, which is 2. The problem with this method is that it very rarely works that you get an integer when you divide straight across. So for example, take a look at B. 5 divided by -7 does not give us an integer. So we need another method to divide our fractions. And that method is multiplying by the reciprocal. So what I want you to think about is 6 divided by 2 is 3. Hopefully we all know that. But we can also flip the 2 and say 6 times 1/2. Well, half of 6 is also 3. So thinking about our subtracting rule is add the opposite and then we follow our adding rule. Our division rule is multiply by the reciprocal. A little phrase that I use to try and help you remember multiply by the reciprocal is copy. That means copy the first fraction exactly as you see it, dot for multiplication, and flip to flip the second fraction. So again, that phrase is copy, dot, flip. Some of you may be wondering why I put the negative with my 8 when in the original question my 7 was negative. And the answer to that is that it's not the 7 that's negative, it's the entire fraction. And when we simplify a fraction, we either put a negative in the numerator or we put it out front, like right in front of that fraction sign. But a fraction in simplest form does not have a negative in the denominator. So while technically it doesn't matter while you are in the process of dividing or multiplying by the reciprocal, on our final answer we're going to want the negative in the numerator, so I just leave it in the numerator. Alright, so remember when you multiply fractions, you want to find a common factor so that you can cancel or simplify before you multiply. So what I notice is my 6 and 8 have a 2 in common, so I'm going to divide them both by 2. I'm going to leave the negative with my 4 so that I don't forget about it when I multiply. None of my other terms have a common factor, so multiplying straight across, I get 5 times -4 is -20, and 3 times 7 is 21. Alright, let's look at one more with this process. So again, our little phrase is copy, dot, flip. And then we try and simplify before we multiply. So I'm noticing that my 12 and 8 both have a 4 in common. So 12 divided by 4 is -3, and 8 divided by 4 is 2. And when I look, I see that my 6 and my 2 have a common factor of 2. So I'm going to divide them each by 2. 6 divided by 2 is -3. And then multiplying straight across, -3 times -3 is +9. And in the denominator, 7 times 1. Alright, so our next one we've got a word problem. A cookie factory uses 1/8 of a barrel of oatmeal for each batch of cookies. They used 3/4 of a barrel of oatmeal yesterday. So how many batches did they make? Well, let's take a look at this with whole numbers to make it a little easier. Let's say a cookie factory uses 1 barrel of oatmeal for each batch of cookies, and yesterday they used 3 barrels. How would we figure out how many batches they made? Well, we would take the number of barrels they used divided by the number of barrels per batch, and we would figure out that they made 3 batches. So I'm going to replace my number of barrels that they used with 3/4. I'm going to divide that by the 1/8 of a barrel that each batch needs, and I'm going to multiply by the reciprocal, copy, dot, flip, and then look for common factors. 4 divided by 4 is 1, 8 divided by 4 is 2, 3 times 2 is 6/1, or 6 whole batches of cookies.